Okay, so it's 6:31, so we're going to get going, and we'll let other people funnel in as we need to. No disruptions because it's a webinar. We don't have to worry about people getting their coffee and coming in the back of the room. So I want to welcome Alecia. Alicia's been traveling a lot, she's telling me, and doing a lot of presentations out on the road about this vitally important topic that we're going to talk about tonight, and that is long-term care and solutions for long-term care. So let me just do a little bit of housekeeping. I just want to remind you that you are being recorded. Chat is disabled, but Q&A is live. So on the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A section, and type in your questions as we go. I'll keep an eye on that while we're talking, and we'll answer questions as we go along. And even if we answer it, that's okay. We'll just you can just note that, hey, you answered my question, or don't. My point is, don't wait until the end because sometimes you forget. So we're recorded. You've got your Q&A. This is what I call a part of our special webinar series. So we've done maybe a half a dozen of them so far this year. We've done a lot of webinar classes. Every Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock, we do a live webinar. That's our weekly webinar series, and I talk about the headlines a bit. I run through some updates from the Ed Slot Elite Advisor Group. As you know, if you heard me talk before, I'm a member of the Ed Slot Master Elite Advisor Group. There's only 400 of us in the entire country who focus on retirement issues and retirement distribution planning with that special education and resources that we have through Ed's group. And I share a lot of information that we receive every week, which is really a great ongoing education for you as well. So that's every week at 10 o'clock, but we record those as well. So I push those out in an email, and you can also find this on YouTube through all those webinars are recorded on YouTube. And we have over 100, and I think it's 170 videos now, webinar videos on YouTube. Alecia, I was just sharing, we're redoing our website, and the website provider said, well, how many videos are we talking about? And I went on the YouTube, and it was 170. So there's a lot of material there. So we do that every week. We do these special webinars. I have a Changing World of Retirement Planning webinar coming up. If you'd like to join that, you just let me know. And then I have an advanced class that's coming up as well. That is an add-on to the Changing World of Retirement class. At the end of this webinar tonight, you should see a population for my calendar, and you're going to have an opportunity to schedule time with me. And I'm just going to show you how that works in a second. This will pop up. I'm going to share my screen. Let me pull this down. Okay, you see in my calendar now, it says pick a time and date. All right, thank you, Alecia. All right, so here's what I'm talking about. If you wanted to schedule 10 o'clock tomorrow, let's just say, this will populate. You pick your time, the 25th. You go in, you choose your time zone, and then you put in your name and email address, and then that'll set up a Zoom meeting for us. You'll get notification during your via email, and you'll be all set there. Okay. Let's make sure, though, that I'll make sure that we're set up right. So we're not sharing anymore, right? I'm glad that wasn't something like a client account information or something. That would have been horrible. So that was the wrong screen. All right, let me find my document now. See, this is why I tell you that sometimes I'm looking all over, because I have to find, now I got to find my notes. Stay with me.
I have 3 screens too, so I understand completely.
All right, I'm actually going to close the calendar down. All right, so so tonight I'm gonna give you a bit of Alicia's bio in a second, but tonight we're going to talk about long-term care costs. What is long-term care? As I said, the cost of long-term care, potential impact of long-term care. What are your options if you need long-term care, and options for you to help protect yourself against that draining need of long-term care. We talk a lot about risks, and through our financial planning process, we identify different risks, and there's really 4 big risks that retirees face. And that, of course, is market risk, and we're all living in that. Prior to 2020, when I was teaching classes live in 2019, I had to remind people about market risk, because we had this amazing run for the longest time. And then COVID hit, and we had this big drop. in the spring of 2020, but it came back really quickly. Folks, you got to remember that we do have market risk. We're seeing it now. It's been many, many months. Right now, we're just about 8 months of a declining market. We've got a difficult slog, I think, ahead of us. If you're on my weekly webinar, you hear me say we're probably going to be in this for the next year and a half, 3 years. I hope it's not this long, but maybe 5 years. We've got high inflation. So we've got a lot of market risk out there. And we also talk about longevity risk. Well, longevity risk is simply outliving your assets. And that is probably the primary concern I hear from people, no matter how much money you have. So whether it's $1 million, $2 million, or 15 or $20 million, when I ask folks, what's your number one concern in retirement, is they say, do I have enough? Then you also hear me talk a lot about tax rate risk. I have a whole class about that. But there's a real concern for long-term care risk, and we're gonna spend about an hour or 45 minutes to an hour tonight talking about that. Long-term care can be just draining to, emotionally draining for a family and the individual, of course, and financially draining for your own savings and retirement plans. And if you have any hopes to pass on anything to your next generation, it can completely obliterate that. And I'll just share with you something I typically talk about in our class when we talk about long-term care. And there was an attorney who asked me several years ago if he would help me with. He specializes in Medicaid planning, and when someone's on Medicaid, that means they've depleted all their assets, and the state is basically paying for long-term care costs. So Medicaid is a federal program, but it's administered by the states, and there's really strict rules about how much money you can have coming in as income and how much money you can have as assets. They're called countable assets, and it's pretty darn low. So I had this woman come to me that was sent to me by this attorney, and this attorney had asked me, can you help me with these Medicaid compliant annuities? Because the person who was handling it wasn't handling it well, and I don't do them anymore, but for a period of about 5 to 7 years, I helped this attorney out with them because they were he helps us out all the time. So I just remember there's a lot of really sad stories around those, but one in particular, this woman was sitting at my conference table, and she was upset to begin with taking care of her mother. And I remember her telling me the story. Her parents were both accountants. They had saved over $1 million, but I think it was a couple $1 million. And they had a practice in Northeast Philadelphia, and they lived in Bucks County, which is a wealthy area. They also had a home in Tampa, Florida. And they would travel down south for the winters, come back up for the summertime, and they see the grandkids, things like that. And one of the trips up here, Dad got sick, went to the hospital, ended up in a rehab, and ended up in nursing care, hospice, and that whole familiar progress. And then the mother also now had kind of followed the same path. So Dad had passed away, Mom was left, but now she was in nursing care. So this woman's telling me about her parents, and they sold the house in Florida. They after when the dad was in care, and then the kids sold the house in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, when Mom was in care. And remember, they had some savings, $1 million to $2 million. And this woman said, so Henry, that was the name of the attorney, Henry tells me that you can help set aside the last $45,000 of Mom and Dad's money. Well, that's the real impact. And that's what we're facing as a country. Alicia's going to tell you, more and more people need long-term care. The numbers are kind of staggering. I remember that it's been a few years now, Alecia, but I was at a continuing education course, and there was an insurance representative who was presenting information about long-term care and dementia. And I was probably about 80% paying attention to what she was saying, but she said, and I say that because what she said to me it really grabbed my attention. I heard her say that the average claim period for a dementia patient was 8.5 years.
It's now longer.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
So most people have it in their head that, hey, if I'm spending $100,000, $150,000 a year, I can handle that because it's probably only be a couple of years. Well, if you're at 8.5, 9 years, oh, goodness gracious, that can really tear things apart. So this is important stuff. It's one of the biggest risks to a financial plan. If you're in that corridor of having $1 million to $3 to $5 million saved, you've got a real risk of being that drawn down and having that drawn down and obliterated. And I always tell people, and I don't know if you agree with this, Alecia, but there really is no one panacea. You need access to multiple buckets of money to help pay for expenses like long-term care.
Agreed, 100%.
Thank you. So let me tell you about Alecia, and then we're going to jump into it. So Alecia Barnette is a senior vice president of care planning and the Financial Independence Group. And I'm going to just read to you her bio. An Appalachian State and Gardner Webb alumna, Alecia is a national speaker with over 20 years of care planning experience, highlighted by her certification for long-term care, and that's a CLTC. And you can tell us a little bit about that in a minute, Alecia, if you want. Alecia began working as the health marketing director at the Insurance Center in Charlotte, North Carolina in 1995. 3 years later, the Insurance Center and Financial Independence Group merged, overseeing the entire transition and bringing our health insurance business to unprecedented heights. Now the senior vice president in the care planning department, Alecia's 20 plus years of experience is evident to financial professionals across the country, specializing in providing asset-based long-term care, case designs to highly successful agents and me. Alecia's main purpose is to assist agents in protecting their clients and their clients' families from the physical and emotional consequences of unexpected care needs. Alecia's use of holistic approaches and strong ethics, along with her desire to grow and solid commitment, make her an invaluable asset to any financial professional seeking care planning assistance. When she's not helping agents protect their clients, you can find Alecia running, traveling, or boating on Lake Norman. And she was just telling us about Lake Norman. That's the lake you're referring to, right?
It is.
Well, with all that, welcome, Alecia.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Okay, so I've talked a lot already. So tell me if you can, and folks, we don't have any scripted presentation. I don't think we have any PowerPoints unless Alecia says, I have a really good slide about that. Let me show you. But tell me about the solutions you deal with and what you have to help people with this long-term care risk. And then I'm going to ask you, and maybe you can answer it any order you'd like, but some of the facts and statistics, because I just told you about 8.5 years for dementia, but you said now it's longer. So let's tackle those two things first, and you can start where you'd like.
Absolutely. Well, I think the best place to probably start is kind of the 4 myths, and you touched on one of them, but I'll start with those, and then we'll go into kind of some of the solutions that you can use to mitigate against those risks. But a lot of people have common misconceptions about long-term care. So let's talk about those. So the first misconception is that's what my savings are for. So a lot of people just generally think they're going to pay for it. They really don't understand how expensive it is. And the other thing they don't understand is if they don't have a plan, their money is their plan. So what I would encourage everyone on this call to do today, there is a website. It's longtermcare.gov. It's got some fantastic general information, who needs care, how long they need care, what type of care. But most importantly, there's a link, and there's a section on cost of care. If you click on that cost of care, it will actually redirect you back to the Genworth cost of care survey. And a third-party vendor does all the research. There's a ton of carriers out there that have a cost of care survey, but really this is what I found to be the best in my 25 years of existence in this industry. But it's astounding, the numbers. You can type in your zip code, you can put in your city, if you're not going to retire in the area you're in, or if you're not going to need use care in the area you're in, you can type in a different state, a different city. But in fact, before the presentation, just to see what those numbers were, I typed in y'all's area, and it's expensive, Mark. It's, for example, for a private nursing home room right now, it's running around $12,000 a month. So that's an average nursing home facility. So recognize that there are above average facilities. Assisted living is going to run, let's see here, assisted living is going to run you $8,145. By the way, that's more expensive than most states. Typically, it's about half the cost of nursing home, and then home health care is running around $52.43 a month. And the thing to keep in mind too, Mark, is most people on this call aren't going to need care right now. You don't know what future costs look like, and there's a nice little slide on this website, and you can project those future costs. So kind of just to see what that looked like in 20 years, for example, private room goes up to, nursing home goes to $21,000 a month. So, I mean, you can see that and that's on 3% inflation. We really don't know what, especially what we're seeing now. I wouldn't be surprised with a shortage of caregivers and just healthcare costs going up that we're going to see those numbers rise dramatically. So again, that's a pretty big myth. It's very expensive, and most people just can't afford to pay those costs, especially if they're going to have a claim that lasts 3, 4, 5, 10, or 15 years. So very expensive. Do we have
Alicia,
questions?
would you mind if I just shared my screen and showed that Genworth cost of care that you were talking about?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a fantastic idea.
Okay, so I hope I share the right screen, but
and while you're sharing it too, we did have a question for home care covering 24 hours a day. That's going to cost a heck of a lot more than $5,000 a month. We're looking more at like $12,000 a month round the clock care. So keep that in mind as well. If you do want to stay in the home, that's considerably more, especially if you're getting to the point where you need 24-hour care.
Yeah, great point. Great point. So this looks a little different than the last time I was on it, but I think this is what you're talking about here, right?
It is. So you got it. And I just typed in your area, so that came up a little different. But notice you are looking at close to the same number. So I was looking at the Trenton area.
Yeah,
So,
that's what came in when I typed my office zip code, but which is fine. Let's do that. Let's see. Yeah, that works.
yeah.
So these are probably the same numbers. And so anybody, this is not a secret website or anything that we just
Nope.
have financial professionals. You can go in and just Google Genworth cost of care survey or Genworth cost of care. And here's, the cost hourly, daily, monthly, annually. And if you really want to keep yourself up at night, grab this slider and say, well, what if I need care in 20 years?
Yep.
Holy cow, these numbers get really big. Semi-private room, $252,000 a year. If you feel more comfortable looking at it monthly, it's $21,000. I don't know which one's worse. But if you think about it, you retire at age 65, you're landing somewhere, let's just say 25 years. These are real issues. And now you can see how, most people want to spend their money on fun stuff and during retirement. So if you're spending your money, let's say you've got $1 million collectively when you retire, and you're taking money out to spend during your time. And even if you still have that million by the time you're 85 years old, that's going to get drawn down very, very quickly. So we've got a lot of headwinds that Alecia talked about, inflation, but I won't keep talking. Go ahead, Alecia, you finish. You take
No problem. But as you can see, y'all, go play with that website. It's insane, the cost of care. So, take a look on your own time. The second myth is Medicare or Medicaid have me covered. And again, Mark, you kind of touched on Medicaid. Who wants to spend down all of their hard-earned assets
Right.
To be placed into a Medicaid facility? Because the other thing is Medicaid doesn't typically cover care in the home, and I don't want to go into the home. So I won't go into all the details of Medicaid, but again, a lot of people think Medicaid's going to cover you, and Medicare has certain stipulations that go along with it. So you have to be hospitalized at least 3 days. It pays up to 100 days of care. And you have to be getting better. It is really short-term care, not long-term care. Right. So, the products and solutions that we put in place for you all is more for longevity protection. If you need care for 90 days, then, my goodness, that's what you have Medicare for, Medicare supplement. But again, most people think that that's going to cover you for longer periods of time. So that's a big one. Here's another big one. I love this one. It won't happen to me. So typically when I do this in a live setting, I ask everyone, do you think you're going to need some type of care in the future? And very little show of hands is typically what I see. So most people think others are at greater risk. The statistics are, and I hate statistics, but I'm going to give them to you anyway, because I'm sure you probably heard them, but 70% of people over the age of 65 need some type of care. 70%. So 70% of people over age 65. And 1 in 5 people need at least 5 years of care or more. So that's going to be more your Alzheimer's statistics that Mark mentioned that have really gone from 8 years to 10 years now. So, statistics, I really don't like them. Like I said, it's like drawing a line down the middle because you don't know which side of the line you'll be on. And here's the problem too. Most of you all that wouldn't raise your hand if we were in a live setting, you think you're in the 30%. So, and if you think you're in the 30%, you don't put a plan in place. And what we know is that is going to have a huge impact on your family, which is the next myth. That's what my family is for. My family will take care of me. And I say this jokingly, but does your family know that? I mean, really, a lot of families, if you take a look at my family, there's 4 of us kids. My mom has been twice widowed. My stepdad died 2 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic, so she's alone. I live an hour and 15 minutes one way. My brother lives 10 minutes away. My stepsister lives about 4 hours away, and my little brother lives 5 hours away. So none of us are really close except for my older brother. So she got COVID about 6 months ago, and I drove down to her house to take her medicine, to take her food. She's got a glass door. I drove down every day for 2 weeks because she had it pretty bad, just to check on her. Ask me, Mark, how many times my brother, who was 10 minutes away, went to go see my mother.
Not many.
Not many. One time, because I asked him to. So, and that's not a knock against my brother, right? He's great at other things, but he's just not going to be a caregiver. And so, family dynamics is important. Long-term care, I've always said, doesn't bring families together. It tears families apart. And what do you think it's going to look like when my mom needs care? And it typically is the oldest daughter in closest proximity. She might give up her job. You might move in with her. She might move in with you, as any decent child would feel obligated to do. Really, your life doesn't end, someone else's does.
Right.
So it's important to know that really, what are the consequences? Be, thinking about this. If you don't have a plan, I mean, what does that really look like when you need care? Make sure you have that plan, written down so your family knows your wishes. If you don't have, again, some type of protection, like some of the policies and solutions that we have to use, if that makes sense, Mark.
It makes perfect sense. And I can share with you, and if folks who have heard me talk about this before know this story, but I'm the youngest of 13, and my mother passed away. It's been about coming up on 3 years, I guess now, at 90 years old. So we've lost 3 siblings, so there's still 10 of us. So I say that because my mother followed that same progression I talked about. I can't remember what she broke. Maybe she broke a rib or something. I don't know, some simple thing. She ended up in the hospital. We had a fight to get her in a rehab center. That's why, folks, you got to have your team. We had a great elder law attorney, an attorney who specialized in elder law. You don't want an attorney who will also help you with your speeding ticket and handle elder law. You want somebody who specializes in it. So we had a great elder law attorney. He stepped in, got her sent to the rehab, because the hospitals play this game of you're admitted, you're not admitted, kind of thing. And it's a funding issue, right? So for them. But anyway, my mother ended up in rehab, and then assisted living, and then long-term care, and she passed away. So there's 10 of us, 10. And we're all there all the time, not, in different shifts. I was on the school board at the time. Our meetings ran till 10 o'clock at night. It was right around the corner. I'd stop in, check in on her. I tell you this, and my brothers and sisters did the same thing. The one brother that anybody hardly ever talks to, and just nothing bad, but he was there with her all day, every Sunday. It was everybody was engaged, and it was exhausting. 10 of us, exhausting. I don't know how one does it. I don't know how 2 do it, but you're right, Alecia. We've seen it. It tears families apart. Kids get resentful. It's a bad scene. So you've got to have your team together. You've heard me talk about a team. I think you need a qualified, certified financial planner. If you're going to hire a financial advisor, I have few biases. I'm very biased against this. Have a certified financial planner, somebody who went through, this is the most difficult designation we have in this industry. Why not have somebody who strives for the best, right? You want a CPA. If you're going to hire an accountant, I believe, hire a CPA. If you're coming into age 60 or more, or if you have parents who are still with you, part of your team should be an elder law attorney, somebody who specializes in elder law. And you might not think you need it now, but this is the same person who can draft your wills, because elder law attorneys and estate attorneys can be the same, right? I joke when I say you don't want the person who helps you with your tickets, but elder law attorneys are almost always estate attorneys also. So you want that person on your team even before you need them, because he or she's going to understand your needs and is going to be able to jump in like our attorney did for my mother. So I'm passionate about that. You want that team working for you, and that plan and communication. Alecia talked about that, because that will alleviate a lot of family issues. And I just want to drive one more thing home, Alecia, and you can comment on it. Single folks with no kids need this even more. Because when you can't rely on somebody next, in your downline, right? Your kids, you better make sure that you've got a written plan and you've got some funding behind you.
You're 100% right. Because they don't have, if you don't have a plan and you have a family, your family's going to take care of you. So on the flip side, if you're single and you don't have a family, you do need it. You do need to put a plan in place. More importantly, I think, than anyone. So that was a good point to make, Mark.
Thank you. All right. So we talked about the myths. Did you hit all four? Yes.
I did hit all four. I mean, there's some other astounding statistics I could go through. For example, I think this one is a big one. Alzheimer's right now, there's over 6 million Americans over age of 65 that have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. One person, check this out, one person every 33 seconds is diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And they're expecting that number to triple. So we're looking at some crazy numbers.
Please, one person every what?
One person every 33 seconds is diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
And they're the ones that have the longest stay, you're saying, right? Alzheimer's and dementia?
Yes.
Kind of the
10
same?
years on average right now. 10 years. It's insane. Because the problem is, it's not a problem, but it is a problem. Medical technology, we're living longer. They're keeping us alive longer. So with Alzheimer's, you can be very healthy. You're healthy heart, but you just don't have a healthy mind. So you can live a really long life, but you're going to need assistance because you don't have your mind. So it's a scary thing, and certainly it would be a pretty big bill to have to pay. And if you didn't have the money and your family steps in, imagine the wear and tear on your kids, your grandkids. I mean, certainly it would be better to supervise the care in that situation rather than provide the care, because you're going to want to be there to wipe the brow and, love on your family and not do the caregiving. So I think that's really, really important to note. And one of the other things too is if let's just say you are spending your money. Right now, they're saying that, if 4 out of 5 family caregivers are spending 26% of their savings on a loved one expense. So if you don't have the money to pay for it, then guess who steps up to the plate? Your kids. If you don't qualify, for example, for Medicaid, because there are various, very, tight guidelines on qualifying for Medicaid. So if you don't qualify for Medicaid, but you still need assistance, then somebody else is going to step in, whether that's the family financially or the family taking care of you. So I think those are a couple of different good points to make as well.
Okay, so we've successfully scared the heck out of everybody on the call. So, but listen, it's about awareness, because it's really easy, and it's we all do it, right? So I'm redoing my estate plan right now. My wife and I talk about it. We move it aside. So we've been doing this for, I don't know, a month and a half now. Updating things. That may not seem a long time, but it's longer than I would like, right? So, but we all do it. But so you got to understand the concern. So if you're one of the lucky people, one of the 30% that doesn't need some type of care, God bless you. But if it's still wise to plan for it, and there are really innovative tools now to plan for long-term care funding. It used to be that you would buy a long-term care policy, traditional long-term care policy. Well, there's a couple problems with that. So first of all, if we were in a live class and I said, well, who here has a traditional long-term care policy? A good amount of hands would go up. if I said, keep your hands up if your premiums have increased over the past few years, the hands would go higher. Actually, they wouldn't just stay up, they'd go higher. And some people would go like this because they've gone up for many people, 10%, 20%, 25%, 100% or more, right? The premiums have really increased. In fact, Genworth, we referred to the Genworth cost of care. They're probably the largest provider of long-term care benefits, but not new policies, right, Alecia? Because they don't write them anymore. So it's really hard to find them. They're really expensive. And if you don't need to care, pass peacefully in your sleep, the money goes to the insurance company, right? So that's a challenge as well. What kind of solutions do we now have, Alecia? So if I called you and I said, I have a 65-year-old couple, they've just retiring, they have $2 million in assets. They're concerned about long-term care. I've told them, we worked through the plan. What kind of answers do you have for me to plug into this plan for folks?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, traditional long-term care, it was kind of the only solution when I first started in the industry 25 years ago. So we sold a lot of it. We're seeing, I like to use the analogy between the old products, which was the traditional, and the new products, owning versus renting. So traditional long-term care is like renting. It's the cheapest way to buy the most amount of long-term care. But as Mark alluded to, they're harder. The carriers are harder to find. There's been a lot of rate increases. If you don't use it, you lose it. There's no exit strategy. So again, it's not a bad way to insure, and hopefully the newer policies won't go up as much in the future, but there's not as many guarantees. So on these newer policies, I call them asset-based long-term care. They are like owning your contract, or owning your policy. So these newer policies, the government has allowed certain life insurance or annuity contracts to be accessed while alive, tax-free for long-term care purposes. So these products are written on life insurance or annuity chassis. And if you live and need long-term care, they're going to leverage your money for long-term care purposes. For example, and I'm just going to give you one example. If you put in 100,000, it might give you 300,000 for LTC. And that's just one way to do it. But the point is, if you live and need long-term care, it gives you long-term care benefits. If you wake up an angel and you never need care, if it's on the life insurance chassis, you're going to get a tax-free death benefit. Your kids will, or whomever your beneficiary is. If it's on an annuity chassis, that annuity, if you don't need it, it's going to go to your kids, grandkids, whomever that your beneficiary is. So again, you have a live benefit, you have a die benefit, you also have a quit benefit, or what I like to call an exit strategy. So if you change your mind, there are ways to get out of these policies. You'll get some or all of your money back, depending on the different solution out there. And by the way, there are a ton of them. In fact, there are more of these asset-based long-term care solutions than there are traditional. The traditional long-term care market is shrinking. There are really only 3 carriers that Mark can offer to you all. So that's not a lot of choices, right? There are so many more choices on the asset-based long-term care products, and a number of different ways that you could pay for them too, Mark. You can use income. So just like the old school traditional where you stroke a check every year for them, you can pay for these asset-based long-term care products using income. You can also, if you want, let's say you have some rainy day funds sitting in your checking account. So for example, that couple, that 65-year-old couple, with $1 million, $1.5 million, if they've got some money sitting in a CD or in a savings account, and that's their emergency money. And if they were to need care, we could actually reposition that into a product that's going to provide additional leverage for long-term care. And if you don't use it, again, you'll have a death benefit. So again, lump sums, cash or cash equivalents is your second option. Here's a third option. Here, a lot of people have a disproportionate amount of money in qualified dollars, Mark. And that's how I save all my money. My employer matches up to a certain point.
Let me just translate. That means retirement.
Yes, retirement. Thank you. Retirement funds.
No problem.
So, a lot of people have retirement funds, and you can actually utilize those to pay for one of these solutions. So if you don't have, excess income, but you don't have cash sitting in the bank or in a CD or mutual funds that you could use, you do have the option to use retirement funds. Again, it's going to have that live, die, quit benefit. And then, of course, last but not least, A lot of people have non-qualified annuities. So, for example, you put in $50,000, it grows to 100. It's tax deferred because it's in an annuity. If you have to take it out, guess what? You have to pay taxes on that $50,000 gain if it grows to 100. But in these type of solutions, just by repositioning it, that example I gave earlier, your 100,000 turns into $300,000 for LTC or long-term care services like home care, assisted living, nursing home, wherever you need it. All of that money is going to come out tax-free. So not only do you get the leverage, it's tax efficient, right? Yeah. So you're not having to pay taxes on that $50,000 gain. So if you have an old annuity, maybe you bought it years ago and you're never going to turn it on for income, that's a fantastic solution to be able to use. So those are the 4 ways you can fund them, but there are so many opportunities. That's certainly why I would encourage you to meet with Mark, because it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Every one of you, you're unique and you might be funding it a different way. So,
Alecia, you made so many great points there. And I remember when folks, so the group that Alecia works for with, Financial Independence Group, we call it FIG. So it's affectionately named FIG. And they're really, really great partners. It's an independent insurance brokerage, and they're partners of ours in that when we have an insurance need, we contact them and say, here are the health issues of this client, whether good, bad, or really, really bad, or really, really good. What are the best solutions for life insurance, long-term care, what have you? So great partners. And go back to that non-qualified annuity. So non-qualified annuity means it's not in an IRA account. It's in a traditional investment account. And to Alicia's point, you put in $100,000, maybe you bought it through your bank or something like that. And it's grown, right? It's grown $150,000. Now that $50,000 is going to come out first when you just distribute out of that annuity. If you say, I'm going to use this, I'm going to set that aside in my mind and my plan for long-term care, that first $50,000, it comes out, it's going to be taxable. When I first learned about the ability to transfer that into a long-term care annuity and have it be a tax-free benefit, I honestly questioned it, because everything I was taught in my CFP training said can't happen, right? But I got to tell you, this is an innovative platform, again, that using every available nook and cranny of the tax code, insurance companies are really sharp about this, and they figured out a way for long-term care to distribute these funds. And that is just one example. Alecia also talked about leverage. She mentioned it really fast, but I want to comment on that, because you can get leverage from insurance companies that you just can't get elsewhere. So Alecia mentioned that you can take as an example, you can take $100,000, put it into annuity, long-term care annuity contract, and get 3 times. 100,000 becomes $300,000 for long-term care benefit. We've also seen, Alecia, I don't know if they're still out there, 5 times, depending on the product. Yep. So turn $100,000 into $500,000 for long-term care benefit. And no joke, there are out clauses in there. So after a certain amount of time, you can get sometimes all of your original investment back. Sometimes, if you put in 100,000, you might get $80,000 back if you quit. So the innovation is out there. And what I love about, again, FIG, I remember I think it was an Ed Slot webinar. We had Ed on a live webinar. We had over 300 people attend that webinar. It was a really big event. And this couple from out in the mainline Philadelphia contacted us, and really, really sweet older couple. And they were really interested in the life insurance retirement plan with long-term care. So that's a life insurance policy that has a long-term care rider. That's one of my favorite ways to insure against long-term care, is using the life insurance contracts, but not everybody can have access to this. So I tell you about these folks because they were probably a little bit above 70 years old, and we were doing everything via Zoom, like we were still kind of doing at the time, but I only ever saw the tops of their heads because they would try to they weren't the most technologically inclined, let's just say. So I only ever saw they'd yell into the keyboard if I couldn't quite hear them. So really cute, sweet couple. But we were able to get that. Neither one of them could qualify for life insurance because of health issues, but we were able to get both of them significantly, really shockingly significant amounts of long-term care coverage for some lump sum payments. So I was really satisfied and happy with that. They were ecstatic because they had tried and tried and tried and nobody could help them. And the people at FIG did. So I got to give you kudos for that. You guys are really innovative, great partners, and you just don't stop. You just look for the solutions.
Absolutely. And, you know, as I said, it's not a one size fits all approach. So, you know, with life insurance products, as you mentioned, there's underwriting. So you could have, it's like buying the same car on 5 different car lots. So the prices are going to be different, right? Yeah. So same with underwriting. So you might have, for example, diabetes, and 5 different insurance companies look at diabetes 5 different ways. So that's one of the things that we're able to do is shop the different carriers and solutions out there to make sure that we can find the right solution for you. So again, it really isn't a one size fits all approach. So we're thankful to be able to have all of the products that are available out there to be able to offer a solution for most clients.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really wonderful. We have a couple questions, so I'm going to ask them here.
Sure.
And you can address them. So, hi, Gerard. Gerard. So Gerard's one of my, he's, I don't think he's missed the webinar. He sure hasn't missed many of them. So Gerard is a retired advisor himself. So I always appreciate his comments and him being on here. So he writes, most couples, when possible, prefer to have a spouse provide help with private aid at home. Your thoughts and financial challenges? He did say with health needs, and I don't quite understand that, but let's talk a little bit about that.
So I'm assuming that you're asking if someone becomes frail and you have a husband and wife situation, everyone wants to do what they can to keep that spouse in the home. That is absolutely 100% the truth. And I'm pretty sure if you asked everyone on this call if they want to receive care in the home or a facility, we're pretty much all going to raise our hand. So I'm a proponent, and that's what these plans do, in my opinion, is keep you out of a facility and more comfortable in your home until you absolutely have to go to a facility. As far as the financial challenge there, it is less expensive than a facility unless you are receiving 24-hour round-the-clock care. So, you know, if you're just, and most people start out in the home. So when you read these Medicaid statistics, you know, that men need care for 2.5 years, women need it for 3.25, that's only facility care. They don't take into account home care. So it's important to remember that, and it is less expensive in the home. And if you have a policy, and I think, I don't know, I think it was Genworth, but I won't swear to it. They said 90% of their claimants are in the home. And that's why, you know, because you have more choices when you have, you know, these type of solutions. But again, I guess the cost can be prohibitive if you do go to round the clock care, which again, as I mentioned earlier, is around $12,000 a month. At least it is for most states. So it can be very expensive.
Yeah. Good answer. Thank you. And thank you, Gerard, for the question. We have another one. Jim asks, can you transfer an existing annuity to an asset type plan? Good question.
It's a great question, and you absolutely can. So there's provisions called 1035 exchanges, which allow you to move them. I'm just going to use an analogy from your right pocket to your left pocket. It is a tax-free transfer. And then when I mentioned the government has allowed certain life insurance or annuities to be accessed while alive tax-free, that's what I was referring to. So you have your existing annuity. In that example of 50,000, it grows to 100. You can 1035 that money into an asset-based long-term care annuity. And you can even put a spouse on there too, if you want to cover their life as well, even if you own the annuity. So there's a lot of unique things we can do with it. And that's because of the Pension Protection Act. So they're the ones that that law was signed into effect in 2006. It was enacted in 2010. And it allows you in certain long-term care annuities to be able to access those benefits tax-free and give you that additional leverage. So the answer there is a big yes.
Great. And so Alecia talked about a 1035 exchange. So 1035 exchange comes under the IRS section 1035, right? So this is And if you're a real estate person, you might have heard of 1031 exchanges that allows you to exchange real estate tax-free. This is something you don't want to go about alone, right? So because if you take a distribution from an annuity and then think, I'm going to now purchase this annuity that, you know, I went to a dinner seminar about, you've blown it. And this happened. So when I first arrived at the bank I worked at before I came out of my own Wachovia, which became Wells Fargo, that exact thing happened. We had licensed individuals who worked in the bank, and there was an individual who took something like $500,000 out of a client's annuity, received a check, and sold them another annuity and sent it in. And that person nearly lost his job for that, because there's about $200,000 worth of taxable gains there. Believe it or not, we were able to have the annuity company take back that check because it was never deposited. So we were able to unwind it, but it was absolute happenstance. I just happened to be standing in the guy's office talking to him, and it was an introductory conversation. And I said, "What's that?" And he told me a story. I said, "That's not the way to do it." So be very careful out there, folks. Make sure, again, you've got your team, right? A certified financial planner, a CPA, and you're at least one attorney, and it should be an elder law attorney, in my opinion, that helps you with your estate plan. But you may need other attorneys too, you know. Let's do it carefully. Okay. So just pulling up my notes again here. So we talked about, you went over the myths. That's really great. We scared everybody thinking, oh my gosh, you know, and we're not here to scare you. We just want to tell you the facts. So everybody is paying attention now, or they're on their third or fourth glass of wine trying to deal with it. We talked about some solutions around annuities. Talk a little bit about the life insurance, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So there are a lot of solutions out there on the life insurance side. Again, I call them asset-based long-term care. You might hear some other ways of identifying them, but they are written on life insurance chassis. So typically they're going to be focused on long-term care. The life insurance is secondary, meaning if you die and don't use it, you know, you're basically getting your money back. So these life insurance solutions, the way that they work is if you live and need long-term care, they're going to give you some leverage. So you're going to use your death benefit first. And again, you can pay premium payments over time. You can write a lump sum check on these particular life policies. And again, the way that they work is you'll buy a death benefit. If you need care, you'll access your death benefit first. Again, the Pension Protection Act is what gives you the ability to take out your money tax-free for long-term care. So you're essentially accelerating your death benefit. But here's the great news. Once you exhaust the death benefit, the insurance company is giving you additional leverage. So Mark talked about the 5 times leverage. So for example, you put in 100, it might give you 500,000 for long-term care. So once you run out of your death benefit, the insurance company is going to continue to pay that additional leverage. And then by the way, if you don't use it, you don't lose it. That's where the death benefit comes in handy. And it's tax-free to your beneficiaries. So same on the annuity side, you have the live, die, quit provisions in those. And again, there's a lot of different ways that you can fund those. You can stretch the payments out over 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, meaning you could stroke a check for 10 years and then never have to pay another dime. Or you could stretch it out and pay it over your lifetime, because from a cash flow perspective, that's the cheapest way to buy the most amount of long-term care. But the good news is if you're using income to fund these plans, those premium payments are guaranteed. So unlike the traditional long-term care, you do have guarantees. So if your premium is $5,000 a year, it's always going to be $5,000 a year. So that's the beautiful thing about the life insurance contract versus the, you know, owning again versus the renting. And then those products are very flexible as far as the ages. You can go anywhere from 35 years old to 80 years old on the life contracts. So a lot of flexibility there. Underwriting wise, they tend to take on more risk than your traditional life insurance policies. So that's also good news. A lot of flexibility there as well. And there's 6 or 7 different carriers versus 3 on the traditional side.
Yeah, and it does it does ping pong around about which carrier is going to be most open to certain things. Alecia mentioned diabetes. You know, everybody, all the carriers look at it a little differently, and not only that, but I found, and if your experience is different, you might have a really nice run with underwriting with a carrier, and it's almost like they hit a funding amount and they say, we're going to tighten it up. Right. And then
Right.
just it happens the other way too. You might suddenly say, and this is why it's important to work with a group like FIG, because they, you know, it's not just our office. They help hundreds of folks like us throughout the country. I'll go in and say, what we do is we submit a health questionnaire, and they tell us who they think the best carrier will be. And then we run all kinds of what we call illustrations to look at the numbers to see what works best. But at different times, our main point of contact is a fellow named TJ, and TJ will say, well, look at XYZ company, because they're really good with their underwriting right now, and it will work here. So that's great stuff too. And there's a lot of innovation, as I said, around the life insurance and these long-term care annuities, but it is all just to help you folks. It's all about, you know, the nice thing about these is, if you know, as opposed to the use it or lose it, if you pass peacefully in your sleep and you're one of the lucky people who don't need long-term care, either that death benefit goes to your kids, your beneficiaries, whoever they are, tax-free. The annuity doesn't necessarily pass tax-free, depending on the situation. You know, then you get into a whole basis thing. But in my experience, and Alecia, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the annuities don't have, I think of it almost as reversed, right? Like the annuity will give you a much larger long-term care benefit, but a smaller death benefit, right? So what passes to your heirs will probably be very close to what you put in, maybe with a little interest or maybe a little less.
That's exactly right. And also too, Mark, I just mentioned two solutions: the asset-based long-term care and traditional. So the asset-based encompasses life and annuity, but there are also, I mean, that's just a tiny little quiver of all the different solutions out there. I mean, there are, for example, life policies with chronic illness riders or
Right.
LTC riders, and you know, there's so many solutions. So you know, we're just honing in on a couple that I handle, but there are many different solutions on the life insurance side that aren't asset-based long-term care that might, for example, provide a higher death benefit if you're interested in more of a Swiss Army knife. So I mean, there are a number of different solutions, but I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out too before we moved on.
That's helpful. Really helpful. All right, so we're up on 7:25. We've been talking about this for about 55 minutes. I just want to offer any last minute questions, and to Alecia, are there any last minute things you want to talk about before we wrap up?
I think we've covered a lot, which is awesome. I do see a couple questions, so I can answer those if you'd like before we
Sure, go ahead.
end.
Yeah,
All right, fantastic.
Yeah.
Gerard mentioned that New York has a regulation for annuity replacement and suitability, and that other states may have similar protection. You're absolutely right. And that's one of the things when we're looking for different solutions for everyone, that we're going to make sure it is a suitable fit and that it's the right solution for you. So that's part of the Mark's job as a CFP, and our job, and my role at Financial Independence Group. So thank you, Gerard, for mentioning that. We have one more question that is a great question. So if you already own a traditional long-term care policy, do you recommend dropping that or going to a life insurance or annuity plan? So the answer is probably not. I would highly recommend getting that reviewed, and I'm happy, my team is happy to review that for you, but it's very unlikely that we'll be able to replace it for a lesser premium. If you're experiencing a lot of rate increases, there are some things that we can do to maybe offset those rate increases and maybe supplement with a plan, but replacing it doesn't happen often, and it's really going to depend on excuse me, how long you've had the plan. But certainly I would recommend running that information by Mark, and we'll review that policy for you to make sure that I might tell you, hey, that's a great plan, you need to keep it. Or we might say, hey, that's not enough coverage, let's supplement and add some more. Or again, if you're experiencing the pain point of those increases, there are some things that we can recommend as well.
Yeah, and we review our financial plans with our clients every single year, and things like that should be reviewed every year, long-term care policies. And Alecia, I'm glad you said that, and I wouldn't expect anything else, but I'm always reluctant to have people drop existing insurance. Certainly without a thorough review of it,
Yes.
because as I said I think I said in the beginning of this, there is no one panacea. There's really not one thing, other than if you win the $1 billion lottery, you might say, these are the funds that I'm going to set aside. But seriously, you're likely, you saw the numbers, you heard the facts. These numbers are big. They're big numbers. $21,000 a month, hundreds of $1,000s a year. It could be for one of you or two of you, and it's really staggering. So you're going to want different areas to be able to draw from. So if you have an existing law, I can make a pretty comfortable statement and say it probably doesn't make sense for you to look at traditional long-term care coverage now because of the way things are structured. But it might work for you if that's your comfort zone. But if you have an existing policy, you're probably going to draw from that policy. If you need care, you're probably going to draw from your savings too. And if you have some kind of asset-based long-term care coverage like we've talked about, that's going to help too. Right.
Yeah.
So the idea is to not erase the impact, because I think that's really a challenging thing to do, but just greatly minimize it.
Yep, I agree, Mark. And I'll add one more thing. It's, I typically recommend let's at least cover 50% of that high end risk. And it's typically, which is nursing home, and it's typically going to cover most of home care and assisted living. So you're going to have other pots of income to help offset some of the facility care if you need it.
Sure.
And then you can choose and other sources like Social Security and things like that. So I agree 100% with you there.
Oh, thank you. All right. So when you log off of so a couple of things. First of all, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm just going to remind you that it's helpful to hit that subscribe button and the like, and there's also a notification, so you get a notification when we have new videos, which we do at least every week. So that helps us. There's also comments you can leave in there. When you log off here, you're going to see my calendar. So again, I'm just going to run it through if you didn't see it before, and especially since I didn't show it before. So this is going to be an opportunity for you to that I've set aside time for you. So there's no charge for this time. We'll talk for 50 minutes, 50 minutes, and we'll go over the questions you have and then see if it makes sense to review your policy, meet a guy again, whatever the situation is. But there's obviously no obligation and no cost for this. And I'm now showing my notes. You would know that I do Zoom meetings and webinars like so many times. Okay, so are you seeing my calendar here?
Looking
Yes.
good.
Okay. All right. So again, you would just go in there. Thank you for those who raise their hand. So you just go in there. If you want to meet 3 o'clock on Friday, you just choose 3 o'clock on Friday. It asks you your time zone. You put in your information, you hit done, and then you're scheduled for that time. We'll meet on Zoom and we'll get your questions answered. If you can't find something on the calendar, you can't fit in tomorrow, Friday, Monday, or Tuesday, I think I have available to you, make sure that you reach out to us. You can reach us at questions@attleborowealth.com or just respond to the email you got as far as an invitation for this, and we'll find some time to talk. If you're an existing client and you want to have a financial planning appointment or some kind of review appointment, please don't grab one of those slots that we're talking about over the next few days, because I will not be ready for you. If you have a pressing question though, and you're a client, we're here for you. Call me, call my cell phone, call the office. I'm here for you. You don't even have to wait to make an appointment now. But I hope that was helpful. Let me end this here before I accidentally end this. I hope you learned a lot. We went over a lot of the facts and myths about long-term care. And I think we covered, as Alecia said, some of the most innovative platforms to help you cover that need right now. Love an opportunity to review them with you. This is really fun and exciting stuff for us. To be able to leverage 3 times your money for long-term care, find a great life insurance policy, something that helps you with that is really great. And I know Alecia gets excited about it as well. We were at an event in Florida in the winter time, this past winter together, and we were sitting at where was that? Universal Studios, that event.
Yep.
And I think we were talking about other things, but we were certainly talking about long-term care too. And it's that's kind of the geeky thing that we do, in this industry, as we get caught up in those things. All right. Any final words, Alecia?
No, sir. I appreciate you being here. As you can probably tell, I love to talk about long-term care. I know that sounds probably crazy to most people, but I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you being available. I know you do a lot of traveling, and I'm glad you were able to at least have this meeting in the comfort of your home.
Absolutely.
All right. All right, folks. So I hope you enjoyed this. We'll see you on Tuesday if you're going to be joining us on Tuesday. And if you watch this on YouTube and you like it, just send me a note. I always appreciate the feedback. If you think I did a terrible job, you can tell me that too. All right. We'll see everybody. Take care. Thanks, Alecia. Bye-bye.
You got it. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.